Right after that drizzly afternoon on I-5, I woke up in a cold, white hospital room in Portland, Oregon. The harsh fluorescent lights burned my eyes. The steady beeping of the heart monitor reminded me I was still alive after the brutal crash. My whole body ached. Every breath felt like it was tearing my chest apart. I tried to move, but the sharp pain made me give up instantly. Just then, a young nurse with a name tag that read Sophia Grant gently placed her hand on my shoulder and spoke in a calm voice. "Ms. Miller, don't push yourself. You've just been through a serious accident." Hearing that, my heart clenched. I whispered, barely audible, "My husband, where's Ethan? Does he know I'm here?" Sophia hesitated, her eyes showing unease. Then she answered quietly, "We called the emergency contact from your phone, but he hasn't shown up yet." At that moment, the pain inside me cut deeper than my broken body. Ethan, the man I'd trusted through 7 years of marriage, was nowhere to be found. The days that followed, I clung to the fragile hope that he was just tied up with something important. But the longer I waited, the heavier the disappointment grew. His phone always went straight to voicemail. My messages showed sent but never got a reply. Then one afternoon, when the pain had drained almost all my strength, the door suddenly opened. Ethan walked in, looking completely different, a sharp blazer, a flashy watch gleaming on his wrist. And beside him was a young woman with long, glossy black hair, wearing a stunning designer dress. The moment she laid eyes on me, she screamed, her voice trembling with shock and horror. "Oh my God, she's alive." For a split second, the air in that hospital room felt like it thickened, pressing down on me. I started trembling not just from the wrecked body I was trapped in, but from a darker, nameless fear clawing at my mind. And deep down, my gut told me the crash was only the beginning. Something far worse, hidden and sinister, was waiting for me ahead. Right after that woman's terrified scream, my mind spun into a whirlpool of memories. Everything felt like it was rewinding, forcing me to remember who I was and the people who shaped my life. My name is Hannah Miller. I'm 36, born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I work in advertising. Not the glamorous, full of ideas kind you see on TV, but enough to cover rent for my small Pearl District apartment and take care of family needs. I've always been practical, disciplined, but deep down I kept a piece of that dreamy little girl who once ran wild through the fields up north in Oregon. The man I loved and called my husband, Ethan Cooper, came into my life 7 years ago at an art show in Seattle. I was there to write a piece for a lifestyle magazine, and he was a young artist bursting with passion. I can still see it so clearly, the way he stood in front of a chaotic abstract painting, fire in his eyes, and told me, "Art is about finding beauty in the mess." I was pulled in right away by that confidence. Ethan didn't just know how to turn colors into language. He had this way of making you feel like he was seeing straight through you. A year later, we had a small wedding by the Willamette River. No luxury reception, no sparkling diamond rings, just wildflowers, a simple cake, and promises spoken from the heart. I truly believed that was the start of a love that would last. But real life showed its darker side soon enough. I left the magazine world for a steady job at a big ad agency, while Ethan chased his art dream. The first years, we were happy, even with the tight finances. I stayed up late editing drafts, and he painted in his studio. We called it 2 lamps burning together. But that light started to fade. Galleries stopped taking Ethan's work. The rejections piled up, and he changed. Short-tempered, distant, disappearing for hours. When I asked, he'd snap, "I just need space," or "I'm networking with other artists." Our savings drained, and the bank account stayed in the red. I tried to hold it together, but every time I brought up money, Ethan blew up. "You don't understand the creative process at all." As our marriage cracked, another man quietly returned to my life, Richard Miller, my uncle, my dad's older brother. Years ago, he and my father had cut ties over a business dispute. To me, Richard had always been a faint figure, successful, distant. We only crossed paths a few times during the holidays, but I still remember the awe I felt stepping onto Miller Estate. The towering oak trees, the library stacked with books, the fascinating travel stories he told. Richard never married, never had kids. His whole life was real estate. People called him the real estate king of Oregon. But behind all that wealth was a quiet emptiness. When I heard he was battling heart disease, I decided to visit him, even though my dad still held a grudge. I thought it'd be a one-time gesture of family duty. I didn't know it would open an entirely new chapter. Sitting by his bedside, he looked at me with an intensity I'd never seen before. "Hannah, you've got the same fire I once had. Don't ever let it die out." Those words etched themselves into me. Back then, I had no idea his legacy, both the fortune and the family secrets he'd never revealed, was about to change my life forever. After what Uncle Richard told me, I couldn't stop thinking about my life, now especially about Ethan, and the marriage I once believed was my safe harbor. When we first got married, we were like the artist and the dreamer in the middle of bustling Portland. Our apartment was on the third floor of an old building in the Pearl District. At night, from our little balcony, we'd look down at the cobblestone street, hear the streetcar bells, and watch the glow spill out from cozy cafes. Back then, being broke felt like a joke. We'd hold each other, laughing loud over frozen pizza and cheap wine, saying one day we'd look back on this as the golden days. Ethan had this magnetic charm then. He'd go on and on about colors, light, and the exhibitions he hoped to join someday. I felt lucky to be with someone so creative. I thought if I took care of the money and let him pour everything into his art, then one day we'd step into the light together. But the years passed, and that dream turned heavy. I took a job at a big ad agency. The workload was brutal, endless pitches, tight deadlines, demanding clients. Still, I tried to get home early, cook dinner, and encourage Ethan. At first, he was grateful. He'd wrap his arms around me from behind while I chopped vegetables and whisper, "I promise just a little more time and everything will change." But that little more time stretched into years. Galleries kept rejecting his work. Projects collapsed. The few paintings he sold barely brought in anything. I tried to comfort him, but anytime I mentioned money, Ethan blew up. Once, when I suggested he could take on a few art classes or do some graphic design to help cover expenses, he slammed his brush down and shouted, "You don't understand the creative process at all. Art isn't something you squeeze out like juice from a lemon." In that moment, my heart clenched. I no longer saw the passionate artist I fell for. I saw a man stuck, drowning in his own illusions. The tension only grew. Ethan started leaving home more, claiming he needed to network at artist meetups. I'd sit alone in the dark apartment, listening to the rain against the window, wondering where he really was. Many nights, I noticed his phone light up with messages from unknown numbers. But whenever I asked, he'd snap, "Stay out of it. I need space." We once dreamed of buying a little house with a yard and a sunlit studio. But those dreams faded into stacks of credit card debt and late rent notices. I became the only pillar holding us up, working nonstop, carrying the weight, and still trying to keep a flicker of hope alive. Back then, my days were on repeat. Waking early, spinning through client demands, coming home to a cold apartment, hearing the scratch of his brush on canvas, then falling asleep under a blanket of worry. I used to believe love could carry anything, but now it felt like a frayed rope, ready to snap at any second. And in that fragile state, the news of Uncle Richard's inheritance arrived like a strong wind that could either fan a spark of hope or blow apart everything we were barely holding together. One February morning, when Portland was still draped in misty rain, I got the phone call that changed everything. On the other end was a deep, steady, polite voice. "Hello, this is Charles Benson, attorney for Mr. Richard Miller. Could you come to my office this afternoon? We need to discuss the inheritance he left you." The moment I heard that, my heart started pounding. I figured it was probably just a few keepsakes or maybe a letter. After all, I'd only reconnected with my uncle in the last months of his life. Still, curiosity and a sense of duty made me agree right away. The law office was inside an old red brick building downtown. The smell of polished wood and the ticking of a grandfather clock filled the air, making me both nervous and emotional. Charles, a neatly groomed man with silver hair, pulled out a chair for me, then slid a thick file across the desk. "Ms. Miller," he said firmly, "your uncle left his entire estate to you: real estate, investments, and Miller Estate. The total value is estimated at over $11 million. The number nearly made me drop the pen in my hand. I stammered, "Are you sure? There must be some mistake." Charles shook his head and pushed a handwritten letter toward me. The paper had yellowed, but the handwriting was unmistakably my uncle's. "Hannah, if you're reading this, I've already gone. I've always watched you from afar, admiring your strength and kindness. I want to give you the chance I never had: the freedom to live life on your own terms. But remember, money is only a tool, not happiness itself. Use it wisely, and don't ever let the fire inside you go out." Tears streamed down my face. I never imagined my uncle believed in me that much. Walking out of the office, I felt like I was floating. In my head, I pictured it all: paying off credit card debt, buying a house with a bright studio for Ethan, maybe even starting a family. I imagined Ethan holding me, his eyes lighting up when he realized the financial weight was finally gone. When I passed a jewelry store, I stopped. In the window, a sleek watch gleamed under the golden light. I bought it on the spot, convinced it was the perfect gift to share the news with Ethan. Not just a luxury item, but a symbol of our new time together. I called him from the car. "I have amazing news, Ethan. I'll be home early. We need to celebrate." On the other end, I heard him breathing fast, then his curt reply: "I'm in the middle of a new project. It's important. Don't expect much from me right now." His words caught in my throat like a stone. But I told myself, once he heard the truth, everything would be different. I drove into the flow of cars on the highway. Outside, the drizzle turned the pavement silver. In my mind, the vision kept replaying: the watch in its box, Ethan's face lighting up, a brand new life without debt. I had no idea that just a few miles ahead, every one of those dreams would shatter into pieces. Right after leaving the jewelry store, I merged into the heavy traffic on I-5. The drizzle shimmered under the fading sunset, the wet pavement shining like a slippery mirror. I turned on the radio. A pop song filled the car, and in my mind I kept picturing Ethan slipping on the new watch, his eyes lighting up when he heard we were finally free from debt. But only minutes later, my world shattered. In the rearview mirror, I saw a massive truck skidding sideways, its giant wheels locked on the slick road. Everything slowed down, like a scene in a movie. The trailer swung across the lanes, the whole steel beast barreling toward me like a giant blade. "Stay sharp, Hannah," I screamed at myself, jerking the wheel. But it was too late. The crash thundered, the car shuddered violently. Glass exploded. The airbag burst open against my face. In that chaotic blur, I saw the watch box fly up, flip open, and the watch spinning, glowing in the air. Then darkness swallowed it all. When I opened my eyes, blinding white light spun my head. The steady beep of a heart monitor echoed. The sting of disinfectant filled my nose. My body felt crushed to pieces. I tried to move, but the stabbing pain nearly knocked me out. A soft voice came through. "Ms. Miller, please stay still. I'm Sophia Grant, the nurse on duty. You've just survived a serious accident, but you're alive. That's a miracle." Right then, my chest tightened. I forced out a hoarse whisper. "My husband Ethan, is he here?" Sophia froze for a beat. Then, with uneasy eyes, she said, "We called the emergency number saved in your phone, but he hasn't shown up." The days after were a whirlwind of hope and heartbreak. I called Ethan dozens of times. Each time, it rang a few times, then went straight to voicemail. I texted, "I'm in the hospital. Please come." The message showed sent, but never got a reply. On the fourth day, I finally received a short text. "Heard you had an accident. I'm busy with a big project. I'll come when I can." That was it. "No, are you okay?" No sign of worry. I read the message over and over. my hands shaking, my heart pounding like it would explode. Then a cold wave ran down my spine, leaving me breathless. Sophia often stopped by, not just as a nurse, but almost like a friend. One afternoon, while adjusting my blanket, she said softly, "Hannah, I don't mean to pry, but your husband's reaction, it's not normal." I stayed silent, tears spilling uncontrollably. 7 years of marriage, and when I needed him most, Ethan vanished like a stranger. On the 5th night, I lay in the dark, the machines humming steadily. I replayed the crash, the watch spinning before my eyes, and all those simple dreams of a little house together. Now, all of it was gone, and I started to wonder, did Ethan ever really love me? Or was I just the lifeline he clung to when his career sank? In that moment, I knew one thing for sure. The crash on the highway wasn't the hardest hit. The deeper pain was still ahead, the pain of betrayal. By the 2nd week in the hospital, I realized the strange part wasn't just Ethan's absence. My phone was full of missed calls from friends, but whenever I called back, they dodged my questions and avoided mentioning him. One afternoon, while Sophia was helping me stretch my legs in their braces, I decided to call Kelly Rogers, my best friend since college. Her voice on the other end sounded tense, almost unfamiliar. "Hannah, I'm swamped. Maybe in a few days I can come by." "Kelly," I cut her off, my throat tight. "What's going on? Where's Ethan? Why won't anyone tell me the truth?" There was silence. Long, heavy, endless. Then Kelly finally sighed and confessed. "Ethan, he told everyone you didn't survive the crash. He even held a little memorial at your apartment last week." The second those words left her mouth, my heart stopped cold. My lungs burned as I gasped for air, each breath ripping through me. I whispered, "He said I died?" "Yes," Kelly murmured. "And Hannah, he wasn't alone. He showed up with a woman. Her name's Vanessa Moore. They look like they'd been together for a while." My blood froze. I started shaking, caught between horror and heartbreak. That night, I asked Sophia to bring me the ward's tablet. I logged onto social media and typed in Ethan's name. What I saw made my head spin. A photo from Artemis Gallery, the hangout of Portland's art elite. Ethan stood there in a sharp suit, his arm wrapped around a beautiful young woman. The caption read, "A new era begins." I called him immediately. Music pounded in the background as his bored voice cut through. "Hannah, I'm busy. Don't ruin this moment." "Ethan, I've been in the hospital for over a week. You told people I was dead?" There was a suffocating pause. Then his voice came back, cold, detached. "I don't have time or money for a failure. Some of us need to move forward. You should accept that." The line went dead. I sat frozen, my throat locked, an icy chill running down my spine. The pain that tore through me wasn't from broken bones or stitched-up wounds. It was from the truth my husband had declared me dead just to start his new life. The next day, Kelly finally came to the hospital. She held a small bouquet, her eyes red and swollen. Sitting beside me, she admitted more. "There's a rumor Ethan and Vanessa, they got married. A quick courthouse ceremony. Only a handful of people there." "No," I whispered, my head spinning. I wasn't even discharged yet, and he tossed aside our 7-year marriage like an old shirt. Sophia stood by my bed, gripping my hand, her voice firm. "Hannah, this isn't just betrayal. This is fraud. He wants your inheritance." My heart pounded, torn between agony and blazing rage. In that instant, I understood. The wreck on the highway was only the beginning. The deadliest blow didn't come from a truck. It came from the man I once trusted with everything. Right after Sophia's warning, I knew I couldn't just lie there. If Ethan was ruthless enough to declare me dead, he wouldn't stop there. I needed proof. The truth had to come out. I called Charles Benson, Uncle Richard's lawyer, the one who'd given me the letter and inheritance papers. His voice over the phone was tight with concern. "Hannah, I was about to call you. Ethan came to my office yesterday. He brought a fake death certificate and even a marriage license with a young woman named Vanessa. He's demanding the inheritance on your behalf." The moment I heard that name, My throat closed up. I clutched the bedsheet, my heart racing. "Mr. Benson," I whispered, "come to the hospital. I need you as a witness when I face him." The next day, Sophia secretly set up a tiny camera in my room, hidden among the medical equipment. Charles waited quietly in the corner by the window. I lay back, propped on pillows, forcing myself to look weaker than I really was. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door swung open. Ethan walked in, looking nothing like the defeated husband I once knew. He wore a sharp navy blazer, his hair slicked back, a shiny new watch on his wrist. The faint scent of expensive cologne trailed behind him. "Morgan," he said dramatically, pretending to be choked with emotion. "You're awake. I've been so worried." Those words stabbed me like knives. I locked eyes with him and whispered, "Worried enough to tell people I was dead?" He faltered for a split second, then quickly regained composure. Stepping closer, he pulled a stack of papers from his jacket. "You've been badly injured. The doctors say you're not fit to manage the estate. All you need to do is sign a few papers giving me power of attorney. I'll handle everything for you." His tone was honey, but his eyes were ice. Before I could reply, he glanced toward the door. A slim figure stepped in. A young woman, long dark hair, bright eyes clouded with unease. Vanessa Moore. The moment she saw me, she froze. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with shock. Then, cutting through the tension, she screamed, "Oh my God, she's my mother." The sound ripped through the room, leaving everyone stunned. Charles raised his brows, Sophia held her breath, and I felt like lightning had struck me. My heart thundered, my head spinning. I stared at Vanessa's young face, the features so familiar, like looking at myself at 18. Ethan's face drained of color. He grabbed Vanessa's arm, hissing, "Shut up. Don't ruin this." But she pulled away, tears streaming down. I've been searching for my mother my whole life, and now she's right here. In that moment, I shook with fear, pain, and a flicker of hope. Memories I'd buried came rushing back. A cramped rented room when I was 18, a brief embrace with a newborn, a faded photo I thought I'd lost forever. With trembling hands, I reached out toward Vanessa, my voice breaking. "Vanessa, is it really you?" She opened her bag, pulled out an old photograph, and handed it to me. A picture of a young woman, me holding a newborn, eyes swollen from crying. The memory I had buried for 17 years. Right then, Ethan's entire scheme crumbled. Not only was his fraud exposed, but the biggest secret of my life surfaced, the daughter I thought I'd lost. The air in the room grew heavy, pressing in from all sides. My heart pounded wildly, my mind went blank. And deep inside, a voice whispered, "This is only the beginning of the storm." The moment Vanessa screamed in that hospital room, everything froze. My whole body went stiff, my mind spinning. I stared at the photo in her hand, a young girl with tearful eyes, cradling a tiny baby. That was me at 18. With everyone's eyes locked on me, I whispered, my voice trembling, "Yes, Vanessa, you're the daughter I was forced to give up." The second the word mother left my lips, my chest tightened. Memories from 17 years ago came flooding back, sharp and raw. Back then, I was a high school senior in a small town in Southern Oregon. I got pregnant by accident, and my boyfriend at the time bailed, refusing to take responsibility. My parents, strict, obsessed with reputation, were furious. They feared the shame, the whispers in church, the scandal that would stain our family. One cold night, my father's voice cut like steel. "You'll live with your aunt in Salem. When the baby is born, another family will raise it. You'll go on to college like nothing ever happened." I remember choking on my own tears, crying until I was empty. But in the end, I had no choice. I'll never forget the night I gave birth in that tiny hospital room. After hours of pain, the nurse placed a baby girl in my arms. Her eyes barely opened, her little fist clenched tight. I only held her for minutes before they took her away. Someone in the family snapped that photo in secret and gave it to me. But later, My parents stripped me of every keepsake, saying I had to bury this mistake. I thought that picture was gone forever. I never imagined it would become the only thread tying me back to Vanessa. Snapping me out of the past, Vanessa wiped her tears and spoke. When I was adopted, my parents kept this photo. They told me, "Your birth mother loved you, but the circumstances were impossible." I carried it with me my whole life. Then 3 months ago, Ethan showed up. He said he knew who my real mother was. I turned to look at Ethan. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. "You found my keepsake box," I whispered, rage boiling in my chest. "You knew about Vanessa all along. And you used it to stage this whole scheme." Vanessa nodded, her voice breaking. "He told me my mother was wealthy, but scared of rejection. He promised he'd help me reconnect with you. He was caring, gentle, then he proposed. I was naive enough to believe marrying him was my path to you." My heart shattered. I turned to Ethan, my voice like ice. "You used my daughter to legitimize your claim to the inheritance? You didn't just betray me, you dragged an innocent girl into your filthy plan." Charles stepped forward, pulling out a tablet. He hit play. The video showed Ethan and Vanessa at his office, submitting forged documents. His voice boomed. "Mr. Cooper, this proves you faked a death certificate and tried to seize assets. And your marriage to Vanessa is invalid. You're still legally bound to Mrs. Miller." Sophia moved closer, her hand steady on my shoulder, whispering, "Hannah, his mask is off now." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay composed. My body lay still, but my mind raged. Looking at Ethan, I no longer saw the artist I once loved, only a cold, greedy stranger. Vanessa turned to me, tears streaming. "I didn't know, Mom. I never knew his plan. I just wanted to find the woman who gave me life." I reached for her hand, squeezing tight. "I believe you. You're a victim too." And in that moment, I realized the real shock wasn't just Ethan's betrayal. It was the brutal truth I had to face. The daughter I thought I'd lost forever was back, but in the most painful way imaginable. Deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Ahead of me lay a fight both in court and in my soul far harsher than the wreck on the highway. Right after the showdown, Ethan dropped his polished act. He cursed, tried to storm out, but Charles quickly called hospital security and filed a formal complaint. Just days later, Ethan was arrested, charged with fraud, forgery, bigamy, and conspiracy to steal an inheritance. The first hearing took place in the Multnomah County Courthouse. I sat in my wheelchair, looking across the room. Ethan wore an orange jumpsuit, his face hollow, his hair a tangled mess. I saw a man completely stripped of the artist glow he once had, just emptiness and failure. The prosecutor read the charges. The defendant knowingly falsified a death certificate, filed an unlawful marriage license, and attempted to seize an estate valued at over $11 million. Ethan tried to play it off, calling it a misunderstanding. But the hospital video and the forged documents Charles provided left the jury with no doubts. In that moment, I trembled but also felt a strange relief. 7 years of marriage collapsed in minutes, but at the same time, I was freed from invisible chains. Vanessa sat beside me, her hand clutching mine as she whispered, "I'm sorry I let myself be fooled, but now we have each other." Her words washed over me. I bent down, kissed her hand, and felt a spark of hope. After the trial, I focused on healing. The fracture in my right leg meant I still needed crutches. Every step in physical therapy felt like climbing a mountain, sweat dripping, muscles burning, tears falling. But Sophia, the nurse who'd been with me from the start, always cheered me on. "Hannah, every small step today is a giant step for tomorrow. You're stronger than you think." And Vanessa was always there. She came to nearly every session, bringing warm muffins from a bakery nearby, sitting with a book while she waited. Slowly, I learned to let her be my strength, instead of clinging to the guilt of my past. A few weeks later, Charles visited with important news. "Hannah, the will leaves everything to you. But if Richard had known you had a daughter, it's very likely he would have wanted her to inherit as well. Do you want to share?" I nodded without hesitation. Vanessa is my blood. She deserves a place in the Miller family. Vanessa's eyes widened as she shook her head. Mom, I don't want money. I just want you. I squeezed her hand and smiled. You need love, and you'll have it. But I want you to have security too. This isn't about money, it's about reclaiming what we lost. That decision felt like the start of a wound finally healing. A week later, I was discharged. Returning to Miller Estate, the grand home where I once played as a child, I felt reborn. The white house with its red roof, the wide porch, the towering oaks whispering in the wind, all of it now belonged to me and my daughter. We began a new life together. In the mornings, Vanessa drove to her college classes. She'd chosen psychology, dreaming of helping adopted kids build healthy connections. In the afternoons, I walked slowly through the garden, breathing the fresh air, feeling freedom seep back into my body. One evening, we sat on the porch watching the sky turn crimson at sunset. Vanessa whispered, "Mom, I never thought this day would come. I had wonderful adoptive parents, but now I also have you. I feel twice as lucky." Hearing her, I felt a rare peace settle deep inside me. In that moment, I understood. Out of the ashes of betrayal, a new family had been born, not perfect, but real. A year after the crash, spring returned to Portland. Early in the morning, sunlight filtered through the old oak trees on the Miller Estate, spilling gold across the wide porch. I stood at the window, leaning on my wooden cane, gazing out at the garden my daughter and I had planted over the past months. Rows of deep purple lavender, bright red roses, proof that even from shattered pieces, beauty can bloom. Vanessa stepped onto the porch, books in her arms, ready for class. This year, she officially became a psychology student at Portland State University. Whenever she talked about her dream, her eyes lit up. I want to help adopted kids understand they were never abandoned. I want them to feel there's always a place they can call home. Hearing her say that, my heart swelled with joy. I knew she'd become a healer of broken souls, just as she had already helped heal mine. Meanwhile, I found a new path too. Advertising didn't call to me anymore. I started writing not just to tell my story, but to turn pain into something others could share. My first manuscript was a novel inspired by my own journey, a woman who lost everything, only to find herself again through rebirth. Each page I wrote felt like cutting away another chain from my heart. I also founded the Richard Miller Foundation, named in honor of my uncle. The foundation supports single mothers and promotes compassionate adoption programs. Every time I signed a grant for a young mom, I thought of myself at 18, the girl forced to give up her baby. And I told myself, no one deserves to carry that pain alone. As for Ethan, the man who once called me a failure, he's now serving an 8-year sentence. I don't feel revenge, and I don't hate him anymore. I just feel lighter because in the end, the truth won. One summer night, we hosted a small gathering right at the estate. Sophia, Charles, Kelly, even Vanessa's adoptive parents Mark and Diana were there. As the golden lights glowed under the oaks, I raised my glass and said, "Thank you. Because of you, my daughter and I have found our family again. From this day on, this won't just be the Miller Estate, it will be home for all of us." Laughter and tears filled the air. And in that moment, I realized something: true happiness isn't measured by what's in your bank account, but by who stands beside you. Later that night, Vanessa and I sat together on the porch steps. Above us, the sky glittered with stars. She leaned in and asked softly, "Do you ever regret it? The accident, Ethan, everything?" I thought for a moment, then smiled.
"No, sweetheart.
Because without all of it, I never would have found you again. Sometimes you have to walk through darkness to see the sunrise." Vanessa rested her head on my shoulder. The night breeze carried the faint scent of lavender, and in that still, peaceful moment, I knew I had been reborn not just as a survivor of the crash, but as a mother who found her lost child. I turned to her and whispered, "Sometimes, it takes surviving a terrible collision to finally find your way home."